Hi everyone. I'll make another quick video just trying to provide you with some pointers or tips on how to write the final paper and prepare the presentation, the two tasks that are still relevant for this class. So you'll be surprised to learn that I have slides for that as well. So let's go over that. The final paper is due April 27th. Send it to me by email by that day. The main objective of the final paper is to analyze a terror incident using the theoretical approaches, talk about the event itself, and talk about the perpetrators, whether it is an individual or a group. So just to give you some idea of what is the expected structure and what I want to have in this paper. So we begin with an introduction. We present the study. In this study, we're going to do A, B, C, and we're going to use those kinds of approaches to do that. After you complete this part of the introduction, then you provide more of like historical evidence using the different references you're going to find to provide details about the incident itself. If there's some interesting background or some kind of backlash after the incident, talk about that as well. And also provide information regarding the perpetrators, whether it is a group or an individual. So this is the introduction part. That should be about 2 pages long, something like that. The next part is the theory section. So I want you to describe the different theoretical approaches we're going to use, the logic of those approaches, the main implications, whether it is theoretical implication, whether it is policy implications. All this information should be based on either the slides, everything we talked about in class, or the book itself. I would ask you to use for your paper at least 2 of the theoretical approaches. If you want to use more, of course, you're more than welcome to. Try to think about different approaches that complement each other. If one approach has clear problems in studying some of the cases, how does another approach complement this one or answer some of those unanswered questions of your first approach that you choose? This part should also be about 2 or 3 pages long. Try to focus on the more relevant implications for your study. Don't talk about if there's, I don't know, 10 different implications for the organizational approach. You don't necessarily have to talk a lot about all those 10 different implications. Try to focus on the ones that you want to talk about for the case study itself. The third section is the main part of the paper. This is the case study itself, and this is the part where we're using the information about the case itself, the historical evidence about the case, and showing how that illustrates some of the implications, theoretical implications, or policy-related implications. Just to give you an example, I'm not going to give you an example with the theoretical implication, but just to give you an example, I talked about from a theory standpoint that one of the potential ways to counter terrorism is to use force, to use violence, to attack using military force a terror group. But one of the implications of the use of force is the blowback. And then I provided you evidence for blowback. The blowback evidence that I provided, that I talked about in class, for example, was the clashes between the Americans and Libya over the 1980s. So the Americans wanted to reduce the extent of terrorism from Libya by using military force, and Libya, in response, used more terrorism against American assets or American targets. That is how we use evidence, historical evidence, in this case, the Libyan and the American clashes over the 1980s, in order to illustrate a theoretical mechanism, in this case, terrorism blowback. So this is the example in this case. And this is what I expect you mostly to do in this paper. Use evidence from the case study that you choose in order to show those different implications, those different criticisms, how exactly are those theories explain why this terror incident happened. So this is the main part of the paper, that should be about 3, 4, 4.5 pages long, something like that. The last part is a conclusion and methods part. So this is a short summary of the findings you should have in these conclusions, and then describe really in brief potential other methods to test those theoretical implications. So you use for this paper the case study method in order to illustrate the theoretical mechanism you choose. So you chose, for example, to use the structural approach to explain some terror incidents, to explain terrorism, and you use a specific incident in order to show how the structural approach led to that incident. Now I want you to talk about potential other methods to test structural approaches. So for example, quantitative analysis. What can you do in terms of quantitative analysis in order to test the structural approach for terrorism. This is just one example. You can think about an experiment or other methods, and I've talked a lot about them also in those in our meetings in class. The second task that you have is the presentation. So you email the presentation along with the final paper. You can use whatever format that you are comfortable with, whether it is PowerPoint, which is the more common form, or PDFs. The structure should be similar to the paper, but this is a more reduced version of the paper. So you should have slide for the title, a slide for the introduction, what you want to do, a slide that describes the incident and the group, a slide, maybe 2 slides to describe the theory that you're going to use, the theoretical approaches you want to use for this paper, and then 2-3 slides to describe to do actual case analysis, to provide evidence from the case itself in order to show how those theoretical approaches are relevant. Then another slide you can use for the conclusions and the methods. Remember that the slides should not have all the content on them. So I know you won't have the opportunity to actually present those things in class because we'll not be able to meet. But I want you to try and build those presentations as if you have about 7 to 8 minutes to discuss your papers. You should have pointers that are relevant to the topic at hand. And if you had the opportunity to present that, you would have done so in class. So that's what I expect overall in terms of a presentation. Now, if for some reason you feel that you have a lot of questions, you don't know exactly what to do, you're more than welcome to email me, whether it is regarding the paper, whether it is regarding the presentation. If necessary, we can also arrange a meeting online, just like in office hours. We just have to set it up in advance. So send me an email, tell me I want to talk to you about my paper, about my presentation, and we can try and schedule that. Remember that I have other obligations during that time, so we have to plan it in advance. So try to send that kind of email as much as you can, as early as possible. Okay, that's it. That's what I have for the paper. That's what I hope you'll be able to gain for that. So I would recommend that you start working on that now, because you have a month, but you have other things you have to do. And again, if you have any kind of questions or concerns, you are more than welcome to send me an email. We can talk about it. I'll see you in the rest of the lectures later this week.